Morning guys, and firstly I must apologize. I haven't made a video in a while, and I've got no excuses now. I'm on holiday, so I've got plenty of free time, so it's time to get stuck in and make some videos. So if you haven't seen me for a while, I'm really sorry, but I'm making it right now. Okay, the topic I'm going to discuss today is around parasites in your koi pond. So normally when something goes wrong, it's either in the water or it's on the fish. And if it's on the fish, it can be a whole lot of things. One of those things is parasites. The first sign for me that there's something going on with the fish is scraping. The fish essentially turn on their sides and scrape along the bottom of the floor, against the rock, or against the side of the pond. It's essentially them just being very irritated and trying to get something off their body. That could be low pH. Most of the time when there's scraping happening or flashing, that is a sign of parasites. And the main culprit normally is this guy. It's a fluke. This is a skin fluke, but you also get gill flukes. And gill flukes can happen in the gill and actually on the body as well if the infestation is really bad. But flukes are an absolute menace. They are, 70% of the problems that you'll have with fish are linked to flukes. It's the main thing that happens in the pond when something goes wrong. Okay, the first thing you absolutely need to get if you're serious about keeping koi and you collecting quite a valuable collection is a microscope. This is a very old one I've got, but as long as it works, it does the job. It's just to spot the parasites, and normally the setting that I use for flukes is ×4. So it's the smallest setting basically. That's really good to just kind of get an overview of the slide and then go down and spot the individual flukes. So when you're using, and it's the yellow one on here, the ×10, that I'd normally use for the likes of Costia and the smaller parasites, but for flukes I use ×4, and that gives me a good view of the slide as a whole, and I can get to see what I'm looking at.
Okay, and this is a skin fluke, and very similar to a gill fluke. Essentially the main difference is the gill fluke has got like 4 spots halfway up the body of the fluke, but essentially they treat it in the same way. Very similar parasites. Okay, and this is the gill fluke, and there you can see clearly the 4 spots that I mentioned. Easy way to tell the difference between them, but the treatment is exactly the same. Okay, the first thing to consider when you're looking at treatment is actually the life cycle of the parasite. And you can't just treat once. You need to treat 2 or more times to make sure that it's completely gone. The fact is, when you're treating, you're only killing the larvae and the adult. You're not killing the egg. So the egg can still hatch. The eggs take a couple of days to hatch, and then they reach maturity in 3 to 6 days. So my best advice is treat first on one day, and then exactly 6 days later do your second treatment, and then come back to the microscope and check and see the following day whether you've actually managed to get rid of the parasites on the fish, if you can see anything still on the fish. And then keep on checking, and if you spot something again, then do the treatment again for a third time, again after 6 days. You need to get rid of this in your system, otherwise you'll be treating and the eggs will just keep on hatching, and you'll basically be going around in circles. So when you're treating a parasite, understand the life cycle and know what you're actually wiping out with essentially the poison that you're putting in the pond, because most treatments are essentially poison, just at a low dose. It kills the parasite, not the fish, because the dose is so low. So absolutely check out what the life cycle of the parasite is. In the case of flukes, you need to zap them every 6 days to make sure they're gone, and then check under a microscope. Use that microscope to firstly make sure that you know what you're dealing with, and then secondly to make sure that the parasites are actually gone after the treatment. The first product that most pond keepers go to for treatment is salt. And in this case, salt I've found doesn't work so well. It possibly kills some of the parasites at quite a high dosage, but it always leaves some of the parasites behind. I've never treated Flukes properly with salt. The Flukes more recently are quite salt resistant. So salt is not going to work. You need to use proper medication to get rid of Flukes. The second product that you might consider trying or get advised to try is M&F, which is essentially malachite green and formalin. It's the bluey green liquid that when you put it into your pond, it turns your pond blue. I've found that malachite and formalin doesn't work so well. So it kills some of the parasites, but not everything. So in this case, I'm not going to recommend using it. Just as in the case with salt, it doesn't kill everything. It does a really good job. And especially if you've got high salt concentrations in your pond, you need a higher dosage of M&F. So I would say stay away from this for Flukes and do a different treatment. Potassium permanganate or Condy's crystals is another option. I've also found it doesn't really get rid of Flukes if you don't keep it in the pond long enough. You need to keep the water pink for a very long time. And obviously you've got to be very careful with the dosage. But, I've had times when I've used it in my pond quite extensively and I've still found a Fluke alive after potassium permanganate treatment. So I would say potassium can work, but you got to be very careful with it. But there's far better options than potassium for getting rid of Flukes. Okay, the best product that we've got locally in South Africa for treating Flukes is called Koi Sapond or Saponva that you used to be able to get from the co-ops or Agrico. You can essentially use anything that treats worms. You've got to look for something that can treat worms, and obviously that's safe enough to put into your koi pond. So Praziquantel is another product that'll do it. In South Africa, I use products that are essentially a Saponva base. This one is called Koi Sapond, and there you can see on the label it says 5 to 7 days is the second treatment. So I do 6 days for my second treatment, but yeah. Malachite formalin's not going to work. Salt's not going to work. You need to get something that really treats worms. At the same time, that'll treat anchorworm. It'll treat any kind of fish louse that you might have. But for Flukes, you need to hit them really hard and hit them with something proper.